The Vista interface. When Vista was first announced, one of the most anticipated features was the new Aero Interface that gives you the translucent window effects, Flip 3D, and the new task switcher. Now Vista isn't just a pretty face though, although it certainly is pretty. Windows Explorer has changed, we've got a new global search feature, and much more. So in this video, we'll discuss the changes to Vista and how you can use these new features to make your computing experience much better. Now, in order to be able to run Windows Aero, you're going to have a PC that meets the minimum requirements for Aero. Now, for this reason, Microsoft has defined what they call a Premium Vista Ready PC, which means that your computer must meet or exceed the minimum specifications, which is a 1 GHz CPU, 1 GB of RAM, and a graphics card that has at least 128 MB of RAM. Now, most computers nowadays will easily exceed this specification. Even most notebooks with onboard graphics are able to run 128 MB of graphics RAM, so as long as you have this minimum specification, you can run Aero. And why shouldn't you run Aero? Firstly, it looks great, and that's a valid reason for running Aero right there. But secondly, and this might sound strange, but if you have a PC that has the hardware needed to run Aero, then your PC will perform better. Why? Because Aero allows the graphics card to take the load of processing the graphics data instead of the CPU performing this work, which it ordinarily would do. Now the result is that the interface is much snappier, it looks great, and performs better. So the bottom line is, in my opinion, if you can run Aero, you should. The Windows Explorer interface has also changed in Vista. Whilst the old Explorer is still really there, it's now been improved and there's a few little subtle features built in that make this Explorer much more intuitive, such as when you copy files to a location and the file already exists. In earlier Windows operating systems, you'd only have the option of overwriting the file or cancelling the copy, which was a pain if this was the first file of 1,000 that you were copying. Now we can just rename the copied file or skip the current file and continue copying the rest. Now another thing I hated in older versions of Explorer was when you were selecting multiple files in a folder by holding down the control key, and as fate would have it, you'd selected say 20 files and then you misclicked, and then you'd have to go and select them all again. Well, we can now mark files in Explorer, which means you don't have to lose your selections, and we'll see how that works too. Vista also has a new search feature built in. Unlike the old search feature that would really only show you files and folders, this search can help you locate practically anything on your system, from files, folders, text inside files, even emails if you're running Outlook, and it's absolutely brilliant. So in this video, we'll cover all of this as well, and we'll show you how to change the look and feel of your desktop so you can set up everything the way that you want. When you first boot up Windows Vista, the first thing that you're going to be presented with is this Welcome Center. Now at a glance, it tells you what version of Windows Vista that you're running, the CPU you're running, how much memory you have, and the host name of your PC. Now underneath this, we've got a few common tasks listed that we can perform, and whilst experienced users are probably going to skip this Welcome Center altogether, it does provide a good starting point for home users that have just bought a new Vista PC so they can get to configuring their computer fast. And each of these items here in the middle part of this window is going to change what's seen at the top of this window. So here we can view the computer details, which we're already doing now. However, if we pick the second option here, transfer files and settings, at the top we can see that this changes to tell you a bit more about how to use the transfer feature of Windows, and if you click this arrow here on the right, this will take you straight to whatever feature you've selected below. So we've got options here for adding new users, connecting to the internet, downloading extras if you're running the Ultimate Edition of Vista, and you can check out what's new. Now there are a bunch more options than this, so if we click on this Show All 14 Items link here, we can see a bunch of other items, and you can go and take a look at them in your own time. Although I will expect that if you are experienced enough not to need this welcome screen, then you, like me, are probably going to uncheck this box here and turn off this feature. Now if we scroll down here, Down the bottom of this window, you can see other offers from Microsoft, such as links to Windows Live, Microsoft Search Portal, a marketplace where you can buy more software. We've got a link over here to Windows Live OneCare, which is Microsoft's antivirus and security package, and I'll cover that in a later video. Alright, well, let's close this for now, and we'll go and take a close look at what's changed in Vista. Now, one of the first things you'll instantly notice about Vista, assuming you do meet the requirements, of course, is the new Aero Interface. No longer do we have the bland, solid title bars around Windows anymore. Now they're a nice, shiny, translucent window that allows you to see through them so you can see what windows are behind. So let's go and open up a window so we can see what we're talking about here. So let's open up Windows Explorer. So we'll click on Start and we'll choose Computer. And I'm just going to minimize this window a bit here so we can sort of see what I'm talking about. Now, if I move this window here over our recycle bin, you can see part of the recycle bin through the window. And that's what's referred to as translucent windows. So you can see through them, and it's a nice, attractive touch to what was otherwise boring and bland old title bars. Of course, we can change the properties of the Aero Glass feature. We don't have to stick with these colours and such, so to do that, we'll right-click on our desktop and we'll choose Personalize. Now we'll choose the top option up here, Window, Colour and Appearance. Now notice that when an application is maximised, the colour goes darker. Well, here we can see the default colour is very dark when our application is maximised, but if we do make this window smaller, then you can see it's now a lighter shade of blue. And the same goes for any of these colours here. And the beauty of Vista is that you don't have to apply the change to see what it's going to look like. We can just click through any of these colours and immediately you can see the result. So if we click through a couple of these, you can see all windows change on the fly. Now, if you don't want to have any sort of translucency in your windows, you can turn it off altogether, but personally I think it's better looking to leave it on, but that's a personal preference, of course. Now, we could also change the colour intensity to make our windows lighter or darker if we like, simply by moving this slider bar. So moving it to the left makes it lighter, and to the right makes it darker, as you can see. In fact, we can't really see on that colour, so let's just change to another colour. We can see it darker and lighter. Now, if none of these colours up here take your fancy, and you'd prefer a custom colour, we can do that as well. We can simply show our colour mixer, and then you can adjust the hue, saturation and brightness of your window, giving you an almost unlimited amount of colours you can choose from. Now, by the way, if for some reason you do have the hardware required to run Windows Aero, but you aren't seeing these translucent windows, then it's highly likely that Windows hasn't yet run its performance test, which it should do before Windows is fully installed. So we'll click on Start, and we'll right-click on Computer, and we'll select Properties. Now, in the middle here, we can see the Windows Experience Index, which is Microsoft's rating for your computer. Now, this is run fine on my computer here, and we can see this value of 1, which is a very low score, mind you. You'll probably have a much higher score on your system, or at least I hope you do anyway. But if you see this number here listed in grey and not blue, or you've recently changed hardware or loaded a new graphics driver, it's possible that Vista isn't either aware of the change or it hasn't rerun this tool to accurately determine your score. So if you click this link and then come over here to the right and choose to update your score, Vista will again test your hardware, and it'll probably take about a minute or so, and once it's done, if you do indeed have the hardware required to support Aero, it'll automatically switch over to running Aero. Okay, so let's go back and look at the other personalization options that we have. Now, we could also change the desktop background. And if we scroll up here, we can see a whole bunch of inbuilt background images. Some of them have been designed for widescreen monitors, others for 4:3 style monitors. And that's a nice inclusion, since a lot of us do actually have widescreen monitors nowadays. And of course, you can use your own background image, as I've done on this machine. Now again, if you select any of these, and if I just move this window a little bit so we can sort of see what's going on, again, you'll get this live preview of what it's going to look like without having to actually apply the change. Now if we scroll right down to the bottom here, we can choose how we'd like our picture to be displayed. We can either force it to fit the screen, which is going to stretch or reduce our image to the size of our screen if it's not the exact size. We could tile the image, and we could just center it in the screen. And these options are largely unchanged from previous versions of Windows. Now our next option here is to configure the screensaver, and this is unchanged from previous versions of Windows. Simply choose the screensaver you'd like to use and how long that you're willing to let your computer be inactive before it kicks in. And of course you can choose whether to lock the computer if the screensaver becomes active, and that's a wise security measure. Now we could also change our system sounds if you like. Again, this is unchanged from previous versions of Windows, so we could play a sound when Windows is starting up or when an error occurs, and so on. Next we have mouse pointers, and this enables us to change our mouse pointer properties such as how the cursor looks or its speed and behavior. Themes let us change Windows appearance using themes, and I'd guess that it won't be long before the modding community starts coming out with some great themes that make Aero look even better than it does now. And finally, we have the option of our display settings that lets us configure our desktop resolution and the properties of our graphics card. Now on the left of this window here, we can change our desktop icons as well. And by default, as you can see, only the recycle bin appears on our desktop, but we can add in the old ones back if you like. So if you want your old computer icon back on your desktop, we could simply click that and click OK. And if I just move this window across there, you can see our computer icon has now been put back. Now the final option we have here is to adjust the font DPI or dots per inch from the default 96 DPI to 120 DPI. And we'll click continue on this here. And we can see it is defaulting to 96. We can change it to a larger scale so it makes text easier to read. Now if 120 DPI isn't enough, you can click on this custom DPI button and we can change it to something larger. Now in this drop down box here, you can change the DPI all the way up to 200%, and you can see how large our text is going to be. But if we click this ruler in the middle here and then drag our mouse to the right, we can increase it all the way up to 500%, which is making this text huge. But if you've got poor eyesight, it's bound to be a welcome feature. Now one of the other changes that Aero brings to Vista is an improved task switcher as well as a three-dimensional task switcher called Flip 3D. Now on the taskbar here, if we hover our mouse over any item, we now have a live thumbnail view of the window in question. And this includes video and games as well. That's right, you could watch live video in the taskbar via a thumbnail. So let's just open up a video so you can see that I'm not lying. So I'll click on Start. We'll go to our Trainers folder here. And then we'll go to the Videos folder and then Sample Videos. Now let's just select all three of these, and I'm going to right click and we'll choose Play. Okay, now if we hover our mouse over the taskbar for Windows Media Player, you can see the video is being shown live in the thumbnail, which is a nice touch. In fact, like with Windows XP, if we open up a bunch of instances of the same application, let's say we'll launch Internet Explorer. If I go and open this up several times, alright, I've just opened up 6 copies of Internet Explorer. Now if we run our mouse through the list here, if we click this and then run our mouse through, you can see again we are getting that thumbnail view of each copy of IE. So again, it's easy for us to see which one we want, even though we have a whole bunch of them heaped together. And what's even better than this? Flip 3D, of course. So to access Flip 3D, you can either click on this little dark blue icon here in the quick launch area, or hold down the Windows key on your keyboard and hit Tab, and you'll be presented with this three-dimensional view of all open windows including the desktop, and again, you can see live video, even games being played in a three-dimensional window. Now you can use the up and down arrow keys of your keyboard, the tab key, or the wheel on your mouse if you have one, and scroll through these like you would a card file, and click on the one you want to show, or hit enter on the selected window, and that'll bring it to the front. However, if you click it with the mouse, you can select any of them, so I could scroll through these and click it, and it will come to the front. And this is a great graphical feature of Vista, and it works very well. Alright, well, the next thing we should probably take a look at here is the Start menu. So we'll click on Start. And firstly, you can see that our Start button here has changed. It's only changed graphically, of course. It still does the same thing. It just no longer says Start. But the Start menu itself is rather different, and it's much better in my opinion. Now, at a quick glance, however, apart from the nice graphical sheen provided by Aero, it really doesn't look all that different. However, it certainly is. Now, at the top left here in our Start menu, we've got the area where you can pin your commonly used programs, and they'll show there all the time, and underneath is where your frequently accessed applications will appear. Now, the All Programs menu appears here at the bottom, but instead of being a fly-out menu where it pops out a menu to the right, this now cycles back and forth to a new menu where your applications now appear in a more Explorer-style view, which is more logical, and it helps avoid problems of having the menus suddenly collapse on you if you misclick them, like it would in earlier versions of Windows. So our applications are now nested in folders. So if we was to click on the Accessories folder here, then this will show the programs that are in that folder. And of course, any subfolders are going to be shown the same way. Now, if we click on the Back button, this now takes us back and forth between the Start menu and our All Programs menu. Now, on the right-hand side of our Start menu, this would probably look rather familiar to you, so any of you who's used Windows XP before, and you probably would have noticed that your old My Documents and My Pictures, My Music, My Computer, they're all now changed just to say Documents, Pictures, Music, and Computer. These things no longer live in the Documents and Settings folder either. It's all now been simplified so that the Users folder are all contained in a folder called Users, and then in a folder that corresponds to your username. So since I'm logged on here with an account called Trainer, my user profile will be stored in the Users/Trainer folder. Now, even though you can't see it because I'm running a rather low resolution here, each of these menu items, when you hover your mouse over it, will show a little graphic here at the top of the Start menu. So I'm just going to go and remove a couple of these items from the list just to make my menu a little shorter, and then you'll be able to see those graphics. So if we right-click on our Start menu and choose Properties, you'll probably notice that most of this here is unchanged from XP. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the link to my recently opened files. So I'm going to uncheck that box, and then I'll click Customize. Now I'm also going to uncheck this box here so I can remove default programs from my Start menu, and we'll scroll down a little bit more. I'll remove Help since I won't be needing that, and we'll scroll down a bit more, and I'm going to add in the Administrative Tools link to my All Programs menu and the Start menu because I like to have them handy. Oh, and by the way, if you do want the Windows Run command to appear on your Start menu like it did in XP, you can simply check this box and it will be back like you're probably used to using it on Windows XP, but you can still use the old Windows key and the R key on your keyboard to fire up the Run utility as you could before. Alright, well I'm going to click on OK and OK again, and now we'll go and click Start again. And if we run our mouse over the menu items on the right, we can now see this thumbnail at the top change. Now the other minor changes to our Start menu here are these buttons down the bottom. Now I will point out that since I'm logged on using Remote Desktop, my icons here will differ from yours if you're logged on locally to Vista. You see, where I have this X button, this button here is going to disconnect my remote session. Now on a locally logged on Vista session, this same button will suspend your Vista session and hold it in memory, only using a little bit of power to keep it active. Now when you restart Vista, it's going to return you back to where you were before you click this button, and this sleep feature is obviously a good one for notebooks in particular. Now a word of warning though, you don't get any confirmation message asking you if you're sure. It's just going to suspend your computer immediately, so if you misclick and hit this icon, it's probably going to be a bit of a pain if you didn't intend to do it. Now the padlock icon here is going to lock our machine, and this icon is the same if you're logged on locally or using remote desktop. And on our Aero flyout menu here, I've got options to log off or lock this computer, but on a locally logged on Vista session, it's also going to show options to put the computer to sleep mode, shut it down completely, restart it, or switch to a different user account. Again, there are no confirmation messages, so just make sure you did intend to click it. Of course, now since I am logged on using a remote desktop connection, I don't have any option to shut down my computer, but if I really want to, I can shut it down or restarting it using the shutdown command from the command prompt. Now when we started this video, I mentioned that Windows Explorer had also changed and it's much better than before. Now since we have our start menu already open, all we need to do is click Computer, and this is going to open up Windows Explorer. Now again, the old shortcut of the Windows key on your keyboard and E are also going to open up Explorer as well. Alright, well I'm going to expand this to make it a bit easier to see here. Alright, well this is the new Windows Explorer. At a glance, you'll probably notice the new icons here showing the hard drives, the floppy drives and CD-ROMs. And I particularly like the way that the hard drive icon shows the amount of free space, and you'll see this color change from blue like it is currently to red when you're running low on disk space, and that's a nice visual touch. Okay, well, starting at the top of the Explorer window, the old style path bar has now changed to this tabbed approach that you see here. Now if I click on my C drive and go into another folder, say the users folder, you can see at the top we now have 3 tabs, or tear-offs if you like, and we can click on any of these and it's going to take us straight back to that point in our hard drive. So we can click Computer, it's going to take us right back to the start, or the C drive is going to take us back to our C drive. And we can also click this little arrow icon here next to each folder, and that's going to show us the other folders that are inside that folder. So if we click the one here for our C drive, we can see we've got 3 folders inside it: Program Files, Users, and Windows. And you'll notice our Users appears here in bold since we're currently browsing that path. So if we click on the arrow here next to our computer, you can see that the C drive's highlighted. And again, that shows you at a glance where you are in the hierarchy of your folders. Now if you do like the old way of doing things, we can simply click here to the right of the tabs, and it's going to change back to a regular Windows path. So you can see, in my case, the users folder is here located on the C drive. Now to the top right of our path bar here, you can see the Windows search feature, which is always present on all Explorer windows, allowing you to start your search from the current folder. So if I was to type in a letter, let's just say the letter T, immediately the search feature is going to start returning to me any file, folder or application within our users folder hierarchy that has the letter T in it. And as you can see, it's really quick. Okay, well if we go and click our back button here at the top left and go back to our users folder, at the top here we've got this blue menu bar that has various tasks and configuration option, and this menu up here will change depending on what you have selected in the Explorer window. Now at the moment I don't have anything selected below, so all we see here is Organize and Views. But if I was to select, say, the Trainers folder, you can see our menu up here changes, and since it's a folder that we've selected, we can now open the folder or share it out. Now if this was a different type of file, such as a picture, you could expect to see different options such as printing the file, running a slideshow, or emailing it or viewing it. So this feature up here is kind of cool, and it demonstrates Microsoft's plan to make computers more intuitive by allowing non-skilled users to work with various documents. You see, it's Microsoft's belief that a user shouldn't need to know that to use a picture, you have to open Microsoft Paint. Or to open a text document, you need to launch Notepad or WordPad. They want to shield novice users from this so that the operating system is smart enough to know what to do based on the type of file you want to use, and this feature does work quite well. Now you might have already noticed that at the top of our Explorer window here, there is no menu bar. We really don't need it anymore. That said, it can be brought back if you do want it there by using one of two ways. Now if you just press the Alt key on your keyboard, it's going to bring it back temporarily and automatically hide it once you've done with it. But if you want it back permanently, we can click on the Organize button and then we'll choose Layout and we can select Menu Bar and it will be back and it will stay at the top of Windows Explorer. Now another cool feature of Vista is this preview pane. Now if we select this, on the right hand side of Explorer, we'll get a preview of the files that we select. Now folders can't be previewed, but let's go back to our C drive and then we'll go say to our Windows folder, and if we scroll down, we'll locate a file, say one of these text files here. In the preview pane on the right, you'll be able to see what's inside that text file without actually having to open up the document with Notepad or some other application. Alright, now on the left hand side of Explorer is our favorite links section, but at this point you might be wondering where your actual folders are. Well, down the bottom here is folders, and by default it doesn't appear as part of the actual menu on the left, and quite honestly I can't understand why it doesn't. So one of the first things that you're likely to do is click Folders, and now this will show you the hierarchy of your folders on your system, something which you'd be used to seeing on other versions of Windows. Now the good news is that once you click this folders link, next time you fire up Windows Explorer it's going to stay there, so thankfully you only need to click it once. Of course if you do like it out of the way you can click folders again and it will disappear to the bottom. Now down at the bottom of Windows Explorer is this Details pane, and it's what I'd call an advanced version of the old status bar, and it shows you much more detail about the property of files than you'd normally expect to see. So if I quickly go to another file, we'll go to our Pictures folder here and our sample pictures. If we just choose a picture, this autumn leaves one for example, down the bottom you can see some more information about the file. We can see its name, its file type, the date it was taken, the dimensions, and so on, and this is all rather useful. Now if we right click on this details pane, we could choose to hide it if you don't want to see it, or we could change it to a smaller or larger size, and if you choose large size, it'll show you a lot of information. In this case, with our picture, it can even show you what type of camera took the picture, if the image was saved with this information. And I know that with my own camera, which is a Nikon D70, it shows right up here a Nikon D70 along with other information such as the exposure time, the flash mode, and other settings. And I find it personally really useful as a budding but rather hopeless photographer. It's nice to be able to look back at a photo and immediately see what settings you had that camera on at the time. Now another nice feature of Explorer is the different views you have. If we go up here and click on the Views button at the top here, we can see most of these different views are exactly the same as what we had in Windows XP. Now again, like with changing our backgrounds and window colors, if we move this slider bar up and down, you can see that this is changing our icons on the fly. But if you just click the Views button and then use your up and down arrow keys or the thumb wheel on your mouse, you can change the icon view in much smaller increments until you find a size that you like. Now another feature of Windows Explorer that I really love only shows itself when you copy files. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to resize my window here so that we can see our desktop, and I'll just change to our list view, and I'm going to copy these files here across to my desktop. Now notice that we get this little tooltip here as well that shows us that we're going to copy or move our files, and that little tooltip there is also new to Vista. Okay, so I'm going to copy these files here across to my desktop. Okay, so I'm going to copy these files back to our Pictures folder, and since the files already exist, we'll get this new window appear. Now, unlike with previous versions of Windows where you had to choose to overwrite the target files or cancel the copy altogether, we now have a third option. So we can again copy and replace the target files, and you can see it does show you a thumbnail preview of the file, so you can see if it is the same image file or simply another file with the same name, so I can compare these two images to see that they are in fact the same. Now I can choose not to move this file, and if I choose this option, you can see our copy still continues, unlike in Windows XP, and this is great, especially if you're copying a lot of files. Now finally, we could choose to move the file and keep the existing one as well, and our copied file will be renamed as you see here with the number 2. Now finally, at the bottom here, we can see that there are now 12 conflicts or 12 files with the same name, and rather than me having to go through this decision each time for every single file, I could check this box, and then whatever option I choose will then be my decision for all remaining files. So if I want to copy and replace all of them, once I've checked this box, I can simply just choose copy and replace. And now all those remaining files have been copied here. So I'm just going to move these ones back as well. We'll do the same for all of our conflicts and move and replace. So this is a really good change in Vista, and once you start copying files, you'll absolutely hate going back to Windows XP. Now another thing that I want to show you with Windows Explorer is this file tagging feature I talked about, and it isn't turned on by default unless you happen to be running Vista on a tablet PC. So if we hold down the Alt key and go to the Tools menu, we'll choose Folder Options, and then the View tab. If we scroll down, we can choose to use checkboxes to select items. So we'll choose that, we'll click on OK. And now notice here in our Pictures folder, we automatically have a new column appear with this checkbox. Now if we check this box, it's going to automatically select all files in the folder. But if we uncheck that and select a single file in this folder, it's going to show this checkbox next to it, indicating that the file has been checked. Now if you do start clicking other files, you'll notice that the checkbox will disappear. But if you click in the column next to each, you can go and add more files to your selection without having to hold down the Control key on your keyboard. Now I really like this feature, since I've often gone to directories in the past, I've selected heaps of files, then accidentally click something without holding down Control, and then I've lost my entire selection. Now this way, you can prevent that from happening. And if you have a tablet PC, you'll also find it's much easier to select items with the pen as well. Now the final feature of Windows Explorer I want to show you is the stacking feature. So let's go to our C drive. We'll just scroll down. We'll select our C drive there. Okay, and you can see I've got 3 directories in the root of my C drive: Program Files, Users, and Windows. But first I'm just going to turn off this preview feature so I've got more space to work with. So we'll click on Organize, we'll go to Layout, and we'll turn the preview pane off. Alright, now if we hover our mouse over the name column or the date modified column, we can see this little arrow appear. Now if we select that, we can choose to stack our files and folders alphabetically or by name. Now if we do the same on our date modified column, we can stack items by a specific date or when they were last modified. Now it's important to understand that this feature will also include in its results any subfolders as well. So since I'm currently here in the root of my C drive, this means that it's going to include every single file on my C drive in its results. So a popular type of stack would be using the type column. And in the drop-down box here, you can see we've only got a couple of options here. We can stack these by our back file, which you can see we've got this back file here, by folders or by type. Now the reason our options are only limited to these few here is that this feature depends on what types of files and folders you have in the current directory. So since in this folder in the root of our C drive, we only have folders and this file here with the extension .back, we don't have a lot to choose from. So let's go into our Windows directory here. And again, we'll choose the type column. And now since we have a whole bunch of other different types of files in this directory, we've got a lot of different choices. All right, well, let's go back to our C drive again. We'll click on the type menu and we'll choose to stack by type. Now what happens is Vista now comes back with a set of virtual folders based on the types of files that are in the stack. Okay, so here we can see we've got contact files, folders, internet shortcuts, JPEG images, audio and video files as well. So if we go and click on one of these, we'll click on our Windows Media Audio Video files. In here, it's going to show us all of these types of files. Now, in this case, it's showing us Windows Media Video files that we have in the current folder and all of its subfolders. And this is great. So now we can easily work with any type of file regardless of where it is on our system. So if we go and click on our Views menu here, and we'll change this to a detailed view, you can see that these particular files are from locations all over our hard disk. And they've been neatly stacked by the type of file that they are. So have a play around with these stacks because, quite frankly, they're really useful. I like to use them myself when I'm cleaning up my drive, since now I can search my entire hard drive for specific types of files and have them separated so that I can work with each stack differently. Now the other major change to Vista is the search feature, and we've briefly talked about it and seen it in action. Now normally I wouldn't be getting too excited about searching, but in Vista the search feature is system-wide and it's really powerful. So if we click on Start and simply start typing, the cursor by default appears in this little search bar here immediately as soon as you open the Start menu. So all you've got to do is start typing and the search will begin immediately. There's no waiting around or clicking search. The search will begin the moment you start typing. So if we type in the letter C, it's going to find all files and programs that have the letter C in them. So if we add another letter, say O, it's now narrowing down the search to only find files that have CO in their name. So if we add M and P, it's narrowing down the list again. Now once you've found what you're looking for, we can simply hit enter and that's going to automatically launch the selected file at the top. Or we could use our up and down keys on a keyboard to run through this list, or of course we could use the mouse to select the file. Now this search is system-wide, although it only does show files that have the exact search for word in the name. Now obviously computer and computer management both have COMP in their name, but if we choose this option down the bottom here to see all search results, then this will display the search results and it will also include other files that may have the search term in their metadata. So let's choose one of these. Let's say this first Windows Media file here. So we'll right click on it, we'll choose Properties, and if we select the Details tab, somewhere in this file you bet we'll find that our search term of COMP appears somewhere. So it's probably going to be here in our comments section. In fact, there you go. The word composed has our search term of COMP right there. So that's how powerful this search is. Now, if you have Microsoft Outlook on your computer, you can also use this search feature to scan through your emails, and it works far better than Outlook's own search does. Now, I have no doubt that once you start using this search box, you'll be hooked on it. Now, if we click on Start and then choose Search, we can also be more specific in our searches as well. Now, we can choose to search everything, which is the default, or we can limit our searches to emails, documents, pictures, music, and other files. Now again, like we saw when we used the search feature of Windows Explorer early in this video, all you need to do is start typing on this search bar up here, and your search will begin immediately. Now, if you want to be more specific in your searches, you can perform an advanced search. Now, the default is to only search index locations, and in a moment I'll show you what they are and how you can change them. But we can change this search here to a particular drive or the entire system. Now, if you choose the custom option down the bottom here to choose search locations, you can be more specific and only include the folders or drives you want. And there's really no limit to how you want to perform your search, including the ability to search network drives if you have them. Now, we can also search by date. The date files were created or modified. We could search by file size. And over on the right here, we've even got options to search by who created the file. So as you may be beginning to appreciate, this new search feature in Vista is amazing, and like I said earlier, once you've used it a few times, you'll love it. The old clunky search in Windows XP is gone, and this replacement is magnificent. Now, anyone that's been around computers for a while knows that Windows can't scan a hard disk that fast. What it's doing in the background when you first install Vista is creating an index of all the files in the default configured index location, and then it stores them so that when we search, it simply has to check that cache and not scan the entire hard disk. So if you want to speed up searching everything on your system, you'll need to modify what you want Vista to index. So to get to the indexing options, we can use the search feature. So we'll click on Start, we'll simply type in Index, and there you can see what we're after. Or you could get to this same place by going to the Control Panel. Up the top, we'll choose System and Maintenance, and then we'll choose Indexing Options. Now here we can see the default locations that Vista is indexing, so to add more locations, we'll click on the Modify button, then we'll choose to show all locations, and we'll need to click Continue on our user account control message. Now we could select our entire hard drive if we like, or we can expand the drive, and then choose whatever folders we'd like to include in our index. Now once you've made your choice here, simply click on OK, and these files and folders will begin being indexed immediately. Now don't worry, it doesn't take a lot of system resources to index things, so you probably won't even notice that it's happening. Now if we click on the Advanced button and we'll click Continue, we can further change the settings for our index. We can choose to index encrypted files as well, as by default those aren't included in our index. We can choose to treat similar words with diacritics as different words, and if you don't know what diacritics are, it's just another word for accents, like those little lines or dots that you see over certain letters, normally from a non-English alphabet. So if you choose this option, you're searching for a word, and there's a word in a file and it has an accent, then it won't be returned in the results unless you explicitly search for that word with the accent included. Now, if you're having problems with indexing running, you can choose to rebuild the index entirely. And remember that this is here if you do start having problems or the Windows search service simply refuses to start. We can restore the defaults back to the way they were if we've made changes. And down the bottom here, we can see the default location of where the index is currently stored. And if you want to change it, you can select this button and then simply browse to a location where you want it to be stored. But this will only take effect when you restart the search service. Now on the File Types tab, we can choose which types of files you want included in the search, and obviously there's heaps of them here in this list, so I'm not going to go through them, but as you can see, the default is to only index the properties of files, but you can index the contents as well, which is great if you want to completely search everything, but be aware that this will dramatically increase the size of your index, and it will probably take a while to index everything, so turning this feature on probably isn't recommended. Okay, in this video, we've taken a look at some of the new features in Windows Vista. Designed to help you be more productive, these features we've discussed are what I'd call nice-to-have features, but once you've been using Vista for a while, you'll wonder how you ever did without them. It's often the little things that make products great, and there's so many little things waiting to be discovered in Vista that make this operating system so good. Of course, the big and noticeable change to Windows is the new Aero Interface, and most users seem to agree that it looks great, and I'm sure you, like me, once you familiarise yourself with the changes in Vista, you'll love it.